Hello, hello. So cool to have awesome audio around awesome audio people, right? See how the level goes down? Engineers know how to bring the levels down. Hi, everybody. I think I know everybody here, but in case I don't, my name is Kenny Cordova. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Chapter, and I want to introduce our new Florida Chapter Board President, Mr. Doug Emery.
Thank you.
I want to thank the New World Center and all the staff here, Bill and his audio crew back there. Those guys rock. If you're ever going to record something in this building, I think you could put a mic by the door. It doesn't matter. It's going to sound good anywhere. Thank you for being here. I want to thank the Producers and Engineers Wing for working with us and helping us host this for everyone here. And we got a lot of cool information and cool stories, I think. Maybe Ed's got a cool story or two. And some of you in the audience might get picked on, maybe, you know. But anyway, we have a good program set up for you today, and I want to let Doug give you a little information about what's going on in the other world besides the studio.
All right. So this is small. We don't really need the mic, do we? Right? You hear me.
It sounds good. It sounds good. It sounds good over here.
So first I want to welcome everybody here. If you're here, you realize how special of an evening this is to have Ed here with us. So thank you so much for coming out and enjoying this with us, because it's not often that we get somebody like Ed in town in our little outpost of Siberia here in South Florida. So that's awesome. I just want to point out a couple things. If you're not aware, we've had some really exciting news this week. That is that the MMA has passed, yes. So for those who know, that's been years in the making and a lot of work on a lot of people. So for those of you who have been to Goth and been a part of Grammy in My Districts, also known as District Advocate Day, which I will never get used to, thank you for your help, because it has paid off. We are here today. We do have one more step, but it seems to be just a formality. To that end, I want to mention, if you will take out your calendars, October 24th, we are doing what will be we're hoping will be a celebration of the full MMA bill passing at Wynwood Yard. Do we have a time? 6 o'clock. So 6-ish. 6-ish. Again, we're celebrating the passing of the MMA bill at Wynwood Yard, October 24th. Please join us. This is really a big deal for those of us who are in the industry, and hopefully we'll see quite a change for us. Maureen Droney, who's with us, will have a little bit of a video talking about that and further celebrating our successes. So please join us on October 24th. And with that,
I'd like to welcome Managing Director of the Producers and Engineers Wing, my fan, and I'm your fan, Miss Maureen Droney. Can we get a hand for Maureen?
Yeah, we don't matter.
Is this amazing?
Right.
Being in a room like this, it's just
Right, exactly.
not only is it beautiful.
I don't know if you need this, but
I don't, right?
No?
You can hear me.
We're good?
Right.
Marta Clark, where are you? And Jesse Allen.
Apparently, I do need a mic technique. I used to be an engineer, and I still do things like, point with it. Al Schmidt points with microphone. Yeah, most engineers aren't that great in front of the microphone, right? They forget things. And because it's so timely, I also want to say we're really celebrating the fact that the Music Modernization Act passed the Senate, and now it goes back to the House, and we're pretty sure that that just should go fine, because they already passed it once. They just have to approve the changes. And then after that, the president signs it into law. And there's so many people probably here who have written their congressmen and their senators and did all the hard work. And it's really amazing, because it is so many different factions of the music industry came together to make this happen. Organizations and people. So that's a pretty, it's been a long haul, but it's happening, and it's really exciting. So thanks everybody who's worked on that. You know, for the producers and engineers wing, it's especially gratifying because it's the first time producers and engineers have ever been mentioned in United States legislation. And yeah. And what it does is, you know, codify their right to copyright protection. So we have this little video. Some of you saw it. It dropped in your email the other day, but let's take another look because it's kind of fun. You can read that all, right?
And the bill simplifies the allocation of royalty payments to producers and engineers, similar to the AMP Act, H.R. 831, introduced by our colleagues Mr. Crowley and Mr. Rooney. Not only does this create efficiencies for artists, it recognizes in federal copyright law the important contributions of producers and engineers to the creation of music.
A lack of recognition in the law for the creative input of producers, sound engineers, and mixers.
I'm also happy that this bill includes language to benefit producers. The role of producers is often not understood by the general public, but their role is critical to bringing recordings to life.
And current statute does not ensure that non-recording artists, such as producers, sound engineers, mixers, receive revenue from webcasts of their work.
I'm proud to sponsor the AMP Act with Chairman Grassley, which would, for the first time, provide federal copyright protection to the sound engineers and producers for the royalties to which they are entitled.
It also provides a clearer process for engineers, mixers, and producers to collect royalties.
It'll get engineers and producers payment for their work to help create these musical creations that people love.
Because to make a great song, you need not just the writers and the singers, but also engineers and technicians and producers. People like my friend Mike Klink, as well as Darryl Brown. They may not be as famous as Guns N' Roses or Leanne Rimes, the folks they helped produce, but they are equally important when it comes to the process of making that music. But they are not often given the credit or the compensation that they so rightly deserve.
We will walk out anyway.
So clearly they had a little help with what they were saying, but come on, that's pretty cool. That's Congress, it's senators and Congress. So we're really here for tonight's program, so I just would like to say as a short summary of what the Producers and Engineers Wing does overall, that we're a nationwide network of people who love both music and the technology of music, and for whom making great sounding records is really everything. I think I can safely say that we all believe that the initiatives that we work on, like getting consumers to hear studio quality sound, like you do when you work in the studio, and getting music creators properly credited and properly paid for their work, they also speak to our overall goal of raising consciousness about the true value of music and the people who create it. So that's what we're really all about. Now the introductions. Originally from Colombia, Maria Elisa Ayerbe. Our moderator tonight is an audio engineer who has worked on Grammy and Latin Grammy nominated albums. With more than 10 years of experience in recording, mixing, and production, Maria has worked here in Miami under Julio Reyes Copello at Art House Studios as a recording and mixing engineer with such artists as Ricky Martin, Mark Anthony, J-Lo, and Laura Pausini. As an independent audio engineer, she has also worked with Juanes, Kronos Quartet, the Nashville Symphony, and the Bogota Philharmonic Orchestra, among many others. So please welcome Maria Ayerbe. Okay, originally from Chicago, Ed CHERNEY doesn't need much of an introduction. His work with artists from Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Browne, Little Feat, Bette Midler, Jan Arden, Quincy Jones, to the Rolling Stones, and just about all of the greatest musicians you can name. His work speaks for itself. He is simply a master of the craft. Also, as some of you know, there would be no Producers and Engineers Wing if it wasn't for Ed. Now, you have to ask him to tell you the story yourself afterwards because he tells it better than me, but I'll only say it involves an AES show, a bar, Ed, a bunch of British engineers, a hangover, and a dare. And that resulted in the Music Producers Guild of the Americas, which became the Producers and Engineers Wing. So please welcome my good friend, the inestimable, inestimable Ed CHERNEY. You guys have your microphone?
Hello. Hi, thank you. We were just discussing back there with Ed, how do you hold a mic? I was saying you usually hold it like a rapper, right? That is the proper way to do. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. It is an honor for me. I am a young engineer starting my career, but I am in the presence of someone that, I mean, it is amazing for me. It is an honor, and I bet everybody in here is thrilled to have him, because we all are inspired by your presence in your career, Ed. So, well, I think so. But I was hard to do this anyway, so I'm just gonna say it.
A gig is a gig.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes I do mix, sometimes I used to work here at the New World Symphony, and now I'm interviewing you and saying really nice things about you. So thank you. Thank you for coming down to see us. Thank you for spending a few days looking at the sea and wearing flip-flops and being happy with us.
I'm happy to be here. Can I say something?
Of course.
Being in this room with everyone here that is so accomplished, and so many people I know here, you know, I think there's a lot of people here that should be sitting here more than I should, but I'm honored and delighted to be here with you, and you know, with such fine people. You know, when you do this for a living, I look at all the men and women that do it as kindred spirits, you know, and I truly love being around and love the people that do this for a living. It's a very special kind of purpose. I mean, I don't like it if we're up for the same gig and you get it. But we eventually heal from that, you know. But that happens to all of us. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for being so kind and bringing me here.
No, we're thrilled to have you. And then, so I assume most of us are producers and engineers, so, right? So we want to get down to the facts, and please tell us, I mean, British engineers, bars, obviously there was a hangover, a lot of jokes, and then this happened, and now we're here, and now the MMA just happened, so it's come down a long road. So please tell us about the British story, and I assume everybody was drunk and wasted, because that were all great ideas start out. How did the producers and engineering wing happen?
I want to mention seeing us mentioned, you know, by those people, I mean, it takes my breath away. You know, anyone that's done this for a long time, and you know what you contribute to music and what you contribute to a recording and a song, and what you contribute to our culture, and how much you have to sacrifice to get good at it, you know, and get the gig. And a lot of times, I would say it's not that we've been overlooked, but, you know, we've been the asshole of this business in a lot of ways for a long time, and not given the respect. Maybe from the artists we're working for, but, you know, as a whole, not maybe getting the respect that we probably deserve for what we do. And seeing that, and the shift of you know, of the perception of what we do is, you know, is overwhelming. And from where we started, it's just, you know, I can hardly believe it. And I'm really happy that I was the co-chair of the Producers and Engineers Wing. I'm just stepping down, but I'm really happy to see handing off to the next generation what's going to happen, you know, this gift, and that a lot of people sacrificed for, and I'm looking forward to people like you and the younger people here that are stepping up and going to be the next generation and really going to take this over the finish line. I mean, it's world changing, and I'm so happy, and I'm so happy that so many people are going to benefit from, you know, from the work that people did before you.
And now the bar and the British.
Oh, okay. All right, so there's never been, I was at a Grammy nominee party. I was nominated for a Best Engineered Recording Grammy. I don't think I won. I was nominated a whole bunch of times before I won anything, so certainly, like many of you, some of you know what it feels like to lose, and it's, yeah, just being nominated is enough. Yeah, bullshit. I was at a bar. There's a guy named Peter Filial and Robin Miller, and they were producers in England, and they're fairly successful. And they, you know, we were drinking martinis, and they were lamenting the fact that, you know, you bloody Americans, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, we have the, Maureen, what was there? The Producers Guild, and in England and in Europe, and they'd have actually got together and got payments for royalties for radio play and things like that. And they were very influential, and they represented all the producers in England and Europe, and to great success. And they were just busting my balls, like, yeah, you guys, you know, I mean, engineers and producers in the U.S. Maybe in Latin America, it's like we were, you know, we were raised by coyotes or something like that. You know, we really don't collaborate well with each other, and anyway, they got me wound up. Yeah, I can't believe you guys, you don't have a guild, and I, you know, and I was like, yeah, goddamn right. Well, anyway, I volunteered to start a guild. I knew a lot of people. I'd been around a long time, and I was drunk enough that I forgot that I had mentioned that. And the next morning, I think Peter called me. Peter and Robin both called me. He says, well, I went, well, what? Remember what you said last night? What did I say last night? You know, you're going to start this thing. And I went, oh, shit. It's the last thing I want to do. You know, I just want to go to work. Leave me alone. I'm happy to go to the studio and do what I do and go golfing or, you know, go out on the boat, whatever. So I didn't want to be a liar. So I think the first call, so I decided to do it. And I had some money at the time. You know, I was doing pretty well. You know, you got the royalties were being paid. It was a good time. What year was it? 1993 or 1994 when we started this. May have been somewhere around there. It's taken that long to get this thing going. So the first call I made, the man that was a friend of mine, and that was my wife's boss, a guy named Chris Stone that owned the record plant in Los Angeles. Started in New York in the record plant in Sausalito. And he was a good business guy. He had sold the record plant. He was looking for something to do. So I hired him to be the executive director to get, you know, to put this thing together. And then I started getting on the phone. So I hired Chris, and we got the legal stuff done. And I had Loeb & Loeb, John Frankenheimer at Loeb & Loeb in Los Angeles. It was a pretty big-time lawyer, and I was using him a lot. And I called on him, and they did all the paperwork and got us incorporated. Pro bono, and I had an accountant at the time because we were making a lot of money, needed somebody to count the money and to set up the accounting and the whole thing, and then I got on the phone. And I think my first call might have been Phil Ramone, and my second call was Elliot Shiner, and I called George Massenburg, and I just got on the phone and I started calling all my friends. Hey, we're going to start this thing, and you're going to be in it, right? Right. Everyone I called signed on. And Chris had the great idea, well, what do we charge? We've got to raise some money for this. And I was paying Chris out of my own pocket, you know, to start it off. He said, $1 a day. It was a good idea. So $365. So everyone that I called sent a check for $365. We got this thing going. I went, and I started out, you know, maybe there were 5, 10, then 15 of us. Michael Frondelli, who was working at Capitol at the time, gave us the conference room at Capitol. I started getting people together. Dick McIlvery, who was a professor at USC. The lawyers came, and we made a newsletter about why it was important to have a producers guild and the things that we stood for. Certainly quality, but certainly the lack of a terrestrial radio performance royalty. You know, it was total bullshit. We don't have it yet, but maybe we're closer to it. But the NMA being recognized, I mean, there were all kinds of things like that. But really, my idea was if we create a space where we could all get together in one room and just, you know, talk to each other, anything could happen out of that, and certainly it has. And that was the idea. I remember, and I went down to Nashville. I called my friend Chuck Ainley in Nashville. I said, Chuck, we're starting this thing. Called together all the producers and engineers in Nashville, and I found a studio where they could meet, and I went down there. It was like 40 or 50 people showed up, and I gave them the spiel, you know, all for one, and, you know, that kind of thing. And I was nervous about Nashville because Nashville can be a very insular place if anybody's worked there. Everyone signed up, gave me a check, and I walked out of Nashville with 40 or 50 or 60 more members.
And they're all unionized.
And they are, yeah.
It's the only place.
Went to New York, did the same thing, and then we created kind of our own little trade show, and just had meetings and got people to come, and this thing built and built, and And then after a few years of it, it was taking up more of my time doing that. And I just want to go in the studio and make music. And so Phil, Ramon, and Phil was a big part of it. And any of you that have had the opportunity to know and work with Phil, was probably the wisest and one of the smartest men you'll ever come across, and the kindest and most loving. You never wanted him mad at you, certainly. But we met with Mike Green, who was a friend, who was the CEO of Neris at the time. And we convinced him, we went and met him for breakfast in Los Angeles and convinced him to take it over, because it got to a point, I think I got it up to about 300 and 400 engineers, and all the best engineers in the country that had signed up. And we got the Recording Academy to take it over, and I didn't like the name, the Producers and Engineers Wing, but I just wanted it, I just wanted it to grow, and if that's what Mike Green wanted to do, and Neris was willing to take it over, fine, perfect name for it. And it was a rough start. We didn't know where we were going to fit in Neris. They didn't know what to do with us. And at some point we got together and we were going to say fuck it and leave Neris, because they didn't get who we were and what we wanted to do, and didn't realize that we could be the conscience of the Recording Academy, which we've become the panel of experts and literally the conscience of the Recording Academy. None of this would have happened. The letter that Neil Portnow wrote to about the performance royalty and about all these things and going to Congress, that came from everybody that goes to work every day and sits behind a console, works on a song, gets a performance out of somebody. That's where it came from. And it just, so Mike was out, Neil didn't know what to do with it, but we persevered and we had some meetings. And they brought in a couple of executive directors and we didn't have a say in it, and they were kind of the wrong people. And then I knew Maureen and kind of insisted that they hire Maureen. And Maureen was the game changer for all of this. She gave us a special purpose. She could articulate what we were about, better than I certainly could. And Maureen really just stuck with it and built this into what it is, and shepherded into what's going on. And now we're 6,800 strong in the Recording Academy, and I think you're the folks, that make it go. And it's changed everything. And for the people that are going to come after us, it's changed everything for them. And I feel that we've always had, if you're successful at this and you work at it, you learn something, it's your responsibility. It's your moral responsibility to share what you know and hand it down. And that's what we've been able to do. And now it's, the next generation of you motherfuckers got to stand up and take advantage of what we've done.
Thank you for the MF as well. I appreciate it.
That's all these people understand,
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, and we are a special type of people, right? Us producers and engineers, we are different type of folks, that we have a different sort of type of mental structure, right, happening inside of our brains. I mean, the artist obviously has to be the artist, the manager, the labels, and within all of this mist of right-sided information from the brain and all the artistry, it's just us doing all the maths and doing all that stuff, or pulling all the musicality. But I know that you wanted to be a lawyer or something like that.
I was supposed to be. But
you were supposed to be. So I want to know, how did you end up being this person that you are and you aspire us so much to be? Because you had to come from somewhere. Like, what took you to become an audio person, a producer inside of this world?
I knew how to drive a truck just like everybody else, right? The path you get here, who knows? But most of us were probably born with the desire to do this, but not with the know-how. That's the only way to learn how to do this is to fail in every possible way, except for Tommy, right? You were good at it the first time, right? Yeah. I knew how to drive a truck when I graduated from college. I put myself through college.
Of course, driving a truck and driving a console is just the same thing.
But I was always, I think the first LSD trip I did, instead of having hallucinations with my eyes, I had hallucinations with my ears. I remember the radio. I was born to do this, and I studied classical piano when I was a kid, and we were always in bands. In my house there was always music. My parents had ran a musical theater, for a community theater. So there was, we were always singing. My mom was a singer at one point when she was younger.
But they still wanted
there was always music.
But they wanted for you to be a lawyer.
They wanted me to be happy, But, you know, I just wanted to do something. I wanted to be able to make a living, and, you know, I just didn't want to be a bum. You know,
Do you think you were close to being a bum at one point in your life?
yeah. Absolutely. If it wasn't for the intervention of some people, I'd probably be living in a box, you know, under the bridge by the river, I'm sure.
Because like I bring up this question because, I mean, you have lived through a lot of different stages where like lots of crazy things were happening. I mean, lucky that my generation, we sort of, in that moment where we start getting into this business and we look back at you guys, we're lucky to be like, thank you, we might just go that way and just stay a little healthier, a little. But I mean, in the ups and downs of your career, I mean, the industry has changed so much. What can you tell us nowadays from everything that you lived back there?
Well, first of all, you know, with a career like this, you know, any kind of artist and any kind of musician, you know that there's peaks and valleys, you know, in your career. You're popular, you're a genius, you're an asshole, you know, at the flip of a switch. You're a genius, you're an asshole, you're a genius, you're an asshole. In all our careers, if you've been doing it long enough, you know that, you know, you're on top of the world and you're under the bus, you know,
Right.
and it's, and, you know, and probably life is like that too, you know, that, and, you know, the window's open and the window's closed.
Because like then you say like, oh, I didn't get nominated. Oh, it's awful. And then it's like, but then it's part of life, right? And we just got to learn through it and maybe not taking it too personally.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, doing this for a living. First of all, to be successful as a producer, engineer, is you have the same odds of becoming as successful and having a career as a prima ballerina. You know what I mean? It's really, and there was a study done with that. It's always been impossible to become successful and sustain a career, you know, making records. Always, and that hasn't changed.
Right.
Although it's easier. If you have a laptop, you can print up some cards and call yourself, you know, anything you want and make any kind of crappy music you want and
Right.
put it on the internet and, you know, you're a producer and you're an engineer and you're an artist and, you know, you're a genius.
So what do you think it takes to actually become successful? Because
Well,
you've certainly made it. So what did you have?
it doesn't feel, I wish I could say it, it never feels like making it. And I would,
Perfect.
probably everyone here, you know, there's, you know, a bunch of people here that have been nominated for Grammys and won Grammys and sold millions of records and live in big houses and have, you know, done very, very well. And just by their own wits, you know, just by your own imagination, you know, you made it happen out of thin air. I mean, literally, you know.
But do you think from our standpoint, is being successful actually making money? Because nowadays we have this whole dichotomy happening, right? A lot of people, or a very few, selected group of people are making a lot of money. But is it successful enough? Do you think they're happy with the artistry? Because back in your day, it was another thing. I mean, products that you could really, really be proud of.
I think the dirty little secret is we all would have probably do it for nothing. I would.
Right.
You know, I'm lucky enough to find something that I could do.
Right.
You know, and kind of born to do it. And I still love, you know, 45 years later, I love going into the studio and firing it up and, you know, disappearing into a song and making people happy and not hurting the environment too much. And, you know, I love, you know,
That's
I
amazing.
love doing that. And everybody here, I'm sure it's the same. I'm sure it's the same thing.
Thank you very much for that. Now,
But if you can make some money doing it, there's nothing wrong with that.
there's nothing wrong with that, and we're also going to talk about that in a while.
But I don't think you can, you know, listen, I think the biggest attribute you can have doing this is having good mental health somehow.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Because the whole thing is designed to rob you of any self-esteem you might ever have. I mean, that's, you know, that's absolutely true. And what it looks like from the outside, you know, you're driving a Lamborghini or, you know, living in a big house on Star Island, you know, or Bel Air, you know, from what it really is, it looks very different, and everybody has their struggles. And you know, and to put yourself in a place that you can find some happiness and, God forbid, a little bit of contentment and pride in what you do, and not let how other people judge you make it how you judge yourself. You know, that's the hard thing. And we've all been fired. We've all been, hey, Ed, I want to talk to you a second. Out in the hall, you better bring your stuff, you know? I mean, we've all probably experienced that, you know, on some level. And how do you recover from that? You know, we've all been passed over. We've all been fired. We've all lost the gig. We've all failed. And hopefully you all get a chance to taste what success feels like. And that's, you know, first of all, pleasing the artist, serving the song, serving the music in a way that it affects people and it becomes part of the culture. Well, if you can do that, that's the greatest. You know, hear a song that you did, that you slaved over and really cared about over the radio, and, you know, seeing an artist have a great career and, you know, because of it, that's, I mean,
Right.
that's the best.
Talking about that, let's talk about a certain trio of guys that they actually made pretty well. So you said about having an artist, just keeping a career, maybe Michael Jackson, Bruce, a producer and an engineer, Bruce Swedien, Quincy, and you were just there at that moment. You met Bruce Swedien when you were in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
there was, you know, I wanted to be, the only way to have a, you know, I probably don't have to tell you, but I'll talk about it anyway. The only way to get a job, Jimmy Douglas probably knows this, is to get a job in a studio, cleaning the bathrooms, you know, cleaning toilets, getting at the bottom. That was the only way. There weren't any schools. There was no other way. You had the desire. Oh, you know, accidentally I got invited down to a studio, and I'd never been in a studio. When I walked in, it was like, oh, this is what I want to do. But there's no jobs, there's no schools, there's no way to get in there. But, you know, you persevere. I think it took me 3 years to get a job cleaning bathrooms at a studio in Chicago, a place called Paragon Studios. And it was cool because they were doing Ohio Players records and, you know, a lot of rhythm and blues records in Chicago, the kind of music I really love. But 3 years of knocking on doors, you know, knocking around and finally
Bruce,
getting.
And Bruce was working there.
Yeah, well, Bruce, I read in, there was a magazine called Recording Engineer Producer that came out of New York, and I saw a little ad for a recording course in Chicago that Bruce Swedien, I didn't know who he was, but I saw a recording course in a studio and I went and signed up. I think it was a couple $100s, and maybe it was the last couple $100s I had at the time.
Right.
And I met him. You know, I didn't really know anything. You know, I was doing some live sound. You know, I was a AV nerd, you know a little bit, but not how a professional studio works, certainly.
Absolutely.
But Swedien was teaching the course. He was always entrepreneurial. It's funny because one of the first advice that he gave me was that I should operate my career like it was a business. And, you know, there was a big party going on in those days, you know, big party going on. And, you know, you take it for granted, but he said you pay your taxes, you invoice, you know, you set it up, you invest your money, you save it when you make it, and I took heart at that. But, so anyway, I met Swedien, and he kind of took me under his wing. Well, he didn't really take me under his wing at first. I attached myself to him. Oh, hey, hey, oh. And he ended up, you know, letting me carry his briefcase to some sessions. I didn't have a job yet. I think I was doing monitors for a PA company or, you know, working in some clubs and selling shrubbery or, you know, pool tables, something like that to make it go. But there was a place called Paragon. I'd been there a dozen times over the 3 years. I'd get up my nerve to, you know, ring the bell and go in, and it was, get out, you know, there was no job. So one day Swedien was working there, and I went there, and, somebody had died. There was a job available. And, you know, it was an entry-level job. But they had a test. They had a test, and I looked at that. I didn't know any of the answers, and Swedien kept walking down where I was taking the test. And I'd say, Bruce, what's the answer to that? He'd go, give me some answer. And he gave me all the wrong answers, so I got everything on the test wrong, and I figured, but he knew he put the word in me. He knew I was going to get a job. And the next day I got a job cleaning bathrooms, show up at 5 a.m. to Paragon and clean the bathrooms. And I tell this, and then a couple weeks later, I got a promotion. They gave me a brush. But I mean, it was the happiest day of my life, and I didn't leave the studio. I think I was making $2 and change an hour. That might have been minimum wage at the time.
Wow.
But I was so happy to be there. I didn't go. I don't think I went home for the next 3 years.
And then from that you moved to LA, and then you bumped into Bruce
well, I worked my way up. You know, you become, you know, a tape op, help set up. You know, running for food. If you didn't get a food order right, you weren't moving up to the next thing because you were a fucking dummy if you can't get a burger order right. So you had to do all these things, and, you know, and the owner of the studio, his name was Marty Feldman, and he was kind of a Marine sergeant. It really was an apprenticeship. Right. You know, so you really, you know, had to show up, and you couldn't fuck up. You know, they taught you everything from, you know, how to hold a microphone on a stand to, you know, how to load a tape machine, how to do the paperwork, how to run a dub machine. None of you have ever had to do that, I'm sure, but pancakes like to explode and blow tape all over the place. But I worked my way up to as an assistant engineer. But there were great guys there, you know, great people there that were very generous with their knowledge, and, you know, and they could see if you had the desire to do it, they'd hang with you.
Yeah. So then you scaled all the way up in Chicago. Tell us about your move to LA, because you moved to LA, and how do you had to basically build your career again?
Well, you know, I mean, I got lucky. I heard a Boston record. I'd never heard guitars that sounded like that. And plus, I think I'd been at the studio for 3 days, and the owner was doing a session, and I was assisting him. I told the story. He passed away, but he didn't speak to me for 10 years. And I was doing the whole session. He was sitting there, and I was running around and doing the mics and getting levels and kind of doing everything. And he was having a great time and kind of yelling at me the whole time that I was a dummy and that's not how you do that. And I think it was about 4 in the morning, and I was tired, and I got pissed. Oh, I know why. They ordered some food, and I went and got it, and he wanted me to give him $3 for the burger that I ordered. And he couldn't buy me a burger, so I kind of told him to fuck off, and I quit.
Oh.
And I figured it's a good time. I heard this Boston record, and I saw it was done in Los Angeles. It really wasn't. So my girlfriend and I just got in the car, you know, got rid of our stuff, what wouldn't fit in the van, left on the curb, and drove to L.A. I might have had a couple $100s on me.
Wow.
And we got there, we got to Los Angeles, and I went through the Billboard directory. They had all the recording studios, and I started at the back. Westlake Studios was the first one, and I walked in, and they hired me.
They hired
that day, yeah.
And
I found out, you know why they fucking hired me? You know, I thought I had such a good resume, and the studio manager took me into the kitchen, and we had a cup of coffee, and when I was done, I washed the cup, dried it out, and put it back in the cupboard, and that's why they hired me. But 2 days later, I was assisting Tommy Vicari, who was doing a George Duke record, and I never heard anything that sounded so great. It just blew me away. And then, you know, like 2 weeks later, in walked Swadine and Quincy Jones, and they were starting Michael Jackson's Off the Wall record. And
Bruce remembered you.
Yeah, Bruce remembered me. I had to remind, hey, looked at me, hey.
Right.
And Bruce had moved to Los Angeles a few years before to work with Quincy, but it was like, oh. And the next thing I knew, I was, you know, assisting Bruce and Quincy. And
so in the level of demanding, how much was this job like?
Oh, it was, I didn't think, I was in heaven. It wasn't demanding at all.
It wasn't, you were actually enjoying it.
Oh, are you kidding?
Of course.
You know, I was very present, you know, every patch cord, everything, you know, everything you do as an assistant to be a good assistant, you know, you're able to look 10 seconds into the future and anticipate what's going to happen. I was very good at that. And
so
I just wanted to
how was that with Bruce? Anticipating his moves, for example.
He loved it. I mean, we had a great time, and you know, and I like to have fun, like to laugh. And
but for example, on the technical side, like we all know that he likes to record everything on stereo. So if you knew that something was going to happen, like you already knew.
I was ready.
All the mics that you liked,
yeah.
positions for everything.
I was ready. Yeah.
He was never. Was he something like a person that would just like in the moment just improvise something, or he would be so methodical.
Whatever it was, I was inside with him. I was part of him. Every knob he turned, even if I was doing paperwork or patching stuff or setting up microphones or getting lunch, my perception was always with that knob he was turning, what's going on, and my ear was always on what they were doing, always on what Quincy was saying, what's going on with that chart, what Jerry Hayes doing with the horns, what Worms, what Rod. Rod's last name, Worms. He passed away. They wrote all those great songs. Everything that was going on, I was just aware. I mean, I was present. I was in it. I was a happy guy.
And then back then, the job of an assistant engineer was an essential role. That nowadays it's sort of like diminished a little bit because people just want to like graduate from a school and then now they're engineers and they're off recording. But back then, you guys needed to do this.
Well, I mean, don't forget that the only place you could make records then was in a studio, in a real studio. This is 1974, 75, 76, 77. You had to go in a studio, and you needed skills, and the people you worked for were all experts, were all masters at what they did. And I feel bad sometimes, like a lot of the kids coming up don't get a chance to sit behind a Swadine, to sit behind a Quincy Jones, to sit behind Rod Temperton, to sit behind the greatest in the world, the greatest that ever lived. It was like the Renaissance. It really was.
Because nowadays, what do you need to turn on a microphone, right? It's just like the interface. Back then, you had to do so many steps.
Oh, music has changed. Things change. I'm not going to be that guy to say how great it was. Right. I mean, I'm lucky. I had a great time, and you know, by doing it a long time and sitting behind those guys, I've gotten pretty proficient at, you know, I
Right.
know how a studio works, certainly, and how to capture music and how to serve the song, and serve the artist, and keep a session going, and, you know, not act out, you know, not to go crazy, you know, so you learn those things, but I got those by sitting behind people that were the masters, that invented modern recording. And that's, you know, I was lucky enough to do that. And they were kind and giving, and, you know, and I was just in love with them because, you know, they offered so much and offered me so many opportunities. Never got me a gig, certainly. I mean, lately I've been, you know, the last 10 years or so, I get a call from Quincy every now and then to work with him. His documentary's coming out. I got to record the music with him on that. But I got to tell you something about them. One of my jobs was, this is fucking cool. One of my jobs was at the end of the session to bring a cassette up to Quincy's house. He had this nice house up in Stone Canyon in Los Angeles, and after cleaning up for the session, I'd get up there around 10 o'clock at night. And if he got a nickname for you, you were in. You know, and I like to have fun. I'm a warm guy. I love people. You know, I love hanging out. I love laughing. And Quincy's kind of the same way, and my nickname was Big Julie. The reason he called me Big Julie is because the deli across the street was called Big Julie's. You know, he put that together, and when he was hungry, hey, Big Julie's, hey, Big Julie, go get me a Big Julie. But that was okay, because he remembered you. And so I'd get up to his house around 10 or 10:30 at night, and I'd knock on the door and say, Big Julie! Take the tape and invite me in. Sit down, we'd smoke a joint and drink some wine and listen to music and hang out and talk until 4 or 5 in the morning. And some nights, Dizzy Gillespie would be there, or Eddie Barclay from France, or all these different guys would be there, and he treated me like I was part of his family. And, you know, just some kid. I'm just some fucking kid, you know, from fucking Skokie, Illinois. I don't know nothing. But to be, you know, treated like that meant everything. I'd do anything for the guy.
Right.
You know, but it gave me so much knowledge, and you know what? And it gave me a template to how to treat other people. No matter if they could do something for you or not, you know, treat people well, and and who you meet when you're coming up, you meet them when you're coming down. So there's no reason not to treat people, you know, with kindness and empathy, and and they did that. And these guys were at the top of the world, on top of their game. They didn't have to do that. And I saw how he treated other people like that. You know, if you were an asshole and a wannabe and a jerk, well, you know, they recognized that, you know, and they were out the door. But if you were genuine and led with your heart, you know, and honest, and you wanted to do it, they treated you, treated like a human.
Try to pretend.
And it's meaningful. And everyone in this room and everyone that does this for a living, I've found for the most part, are kind, loving, giving people. Not only talented, you know, and have worked very hard to gain the skills that they have, but I mean, man, you know, I see how you treat other people, and to a person, everyone that's successful here is kind and giving and helps people up, helps them up, and not tries to hold them down.
That's great.
Unless you're going for the same gig, of course, and then all bets are off.
Thank you for that, because I think that is very valuable nowadays, and at every stage. It's just very important to you never know who you're going to work with in the future. And then,
well, that's what's nice about this. We look out for each other. We really do.
Right.
Even though we hate each other's guts, you know, if they get your gig. But we do. We look out for each other, and we help each other. And, you know, we're cut from the same cloth, all of us.
That's true. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And then, so when do you actually, take that next step and you get that call, you're going to be the engineer for this huge project? I
was very, very slow. Can you say retard? I was a retard. You know, working with Bruce and Quincy, you wouldn't get a chance to sit in Bruce's chair, certainly. He's not giving up that chair. To this day, he's not giving up that chair. Any of us are kind of not giving up that chair either once you're sitting there. But I got to do other things at Westlake. You know, I got to, you know, being on staff. You know, you kind of learn sitting behind guys like Tommy Vicari, Mick Kozowski, Bruce Swedien. So, you know, you get an opportunity, get an opportunity to record a vocal, you know, the engineer didn't show that day, or, you know, a horn overdub or tracking date. So I started little by little doing things. Although, at Westlake, the great thing was if there wasn't a gig, they'd give you the studio at night. So it was always, always going out in clubs and have my friends were musicians and, finding groups, and you could bring them in 10, 11, 12 a night. So many nights we started a session at 1 in the morning and worked till 9 in the morning because I had a session to assist at 10 in the morning. So many, many, many nights, we did that. So you'd get an opportunity. And the beauty was at Westlake, they were gear dealers too when they designed studios. So they had every piece of gear, every fucking piece of gear you ever wanted. Problem was I couldn't get a sound because I thought it was my responsibility to use every piece of gear on everything I did, and it turned out that that's really not the case. I think I remember I had a mix-up or something, and the producer, I used up all the patch cords and everything. I thought I was doing a great job. He says, what's that? When you got on the guitar, why don't you pull that off? Oh, I pull the patch cord out.
First record that you remember you engineered and it got you somewhere else in your life?
Well,
it was your own project.
You know what? I was assisting Mick Wazowski. Mick Wazowski was, just a genius, just a brilliant engineer and one of the sweetest guys. But this guy, he can design a piece of gear and, make a great sounding record. I remember he'd be doing punch-ins and soldering a compressor, circuit board at the same time. But he had moved from Rochester, New York, and I assisted him. He was doing a Chuck Mangione record, and I assisted him, and he got busy doing Chuck Mangione. When he got to L.A., people saw how talented he was. But he had a jingle client, a guy named Ferdinand J. Smith, who was in Rochester, New York, but somehow was doing all the car dealers and power companies, everything in the Tri-Cities area of upstate New York. That would be Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo, if anyone's from there. And Mick got too busy for him and kind of handed it off, and it was my first client. And I went up from maybe $5 or $6 an hour to $25 an hour doing jingles for this guy, which was great because we'd come to LA for, 2 weeks a month, and all of a sudden, in a week I was, could cover my nut. I was making more money than I ever did. So I started doing a lot of jingles, and you learn how to move fast, certainly. And one day we'd be doing a polka band, the next day an orchestra, and the next day a rock band, and, it could be, anything, any kind of music. So you get proficient at a lot of things, and, I eventually could get a drum sound just by the leakage in the room. There was no time to get hit the kick drum. There wasn't going to be none of that. So just by the leakage of the room, I could set the level and get a pretty good idea, and, and by the first bar, I could have a drum sound. So you learn how to move fast. So I get a call one day that Ry Cooder, anybody know who Ry Cooder is? You kids probably don't know, but he's an American treasure. He's been around a long time. And someone I certainly admired, and I got a call. Ry Cooder got hired to do a commercial, a Delco commercial. And he was looking for somebody young and hip and he could relate to, and go in the studio that had some experience doing jingles. So I got a call from Ry Cooder one day. He said, yeah, so we went into a studio. George Massenberg had a studio called The Complex in West Los Angeles, and it was an awesome place. And so I met Ry Cooder, and we did a Delco commercial, and it was, his kind of music, and not easy to catch. I think Jim Keltner playing drums, and if any of you have ever recorded Jim Keltner, he's brilliant, but sometimes he's hard to catch, it's because he's doing so many things, and he goes from DC to Blue Light, in 2 notes. So, but I caught it, and I moved fast, and we had a great time, and we joked around, and we hit it off, and a couple weeks later, I get a call that Ry Cooder's doing a record, and if I'd be interested in doing a record, it was a record called Get Rhythm. And it was the first, and I'd worked on a lot of records, and, I've done a mix here and there, but nothing, nothing on that level with Ry, with Van Dyke Parks and Flaco Jimenez and Keltner, and a lot of just great musicians in a room, and I did the record, and that was a real learning experience.
I bet. There is a question that we've got your.
I'd like to mention one thing. The greatest experience I had good microphones, and at Ocean Way they had all the vintage gear, and I got a great drum sound, and he had this Super Scope cassette player, and it had a built-in mic with a compressor on it, a limiter on it that sounded just awful, but he liked the sound of it, and he made me hang it on a mic stand over the drum kit, and that was going to be the drum sound on a song, and I couldn't believe it. You're going to make me have to, but it was a good lesson because it was really cool, and it served the song perfectly, and it sounded perfectly shitty, awful, the worst thing you could ever did, but I remember being horrified at the time and giving a big argument about it.
Of course.
But anyway, he prevailed, and he was right, and now I learned it's okay if it's shitty.
So
Shitty can be good.
Exactly.
Anyway, and because I did a Raikuda record, did okay, I got a call from David Lindley. He had a band called El Rayo X, and working for Cooter was kind of like the stamp of approval for some of these guys. And I hit it off with Lindley and the band, and we made a record called Very Greasy. And because I did that, I found out that Bonnie Raitt was making a record, and I kind of bugged all her friends that, hey, you know what, I love Bonnie Raitt, I'm perfect, I can get a sound on a slide guitar like nobody's business, and you know, I understand what it's supposed to be, and I got a call from Bonnie Raitt. And Don was actually called.
And that was
we hadn't met.
basically it, right?
Yeah, and I remember getting that call and, you know, showing up, and we made a Nick of Time with Bonnie Raitt, and that blew up her career and blew up mine and blew up Don's, and
So-
here we are in Miami talking to you, motherfucker.
There you go. So then Bonnie Raitt, 1994, that was your first Grammy.
No, 80, yeah, 94.
94. So,
But I got nominated like 6 times before that, but didn't win.
right. But talking about this particular experience, out of 6 nominees, you were nominated for 3 albums out of this.
3 out of the 5.
3 out of the 5.
Yeah.
That was a little unfair because you were going to win anyway.
No, they told me I was going to lose. I was going to cancel myself out.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you
But it was,
laughed?
I mean, it was pretty cool. I'd done a Jackson Browne record, Bonnie Raitt record that year, and but I didn't engineer and mix all of it. It was called Country Rhythm and Blues that we went to Nashville and did, you know, with
And it was
country artists
It
and
was for
rhythm.
best engineering, right?
Yeah, it was for best engineer. Yeah.
Right. So up to that point, and with everything that we talked about, I just felt like bringing in some of the questions that everybody that
I'd
signed
like to
up-
mention I really didn't know what the hell I was doing in those days, but I could cover it up with bluster.
Perfect.
Don't ever
perfect,
do
'cause
that.
it-
You see
'cause it
people do
comes
it, they
down
don't know
to
what they're
the-
doing, but they cover it up with attitude. I was good with that. But I really didn't know what the hell I was doing, man. I was just going by the seat of my pants, and I was really afraid every minute that someone was going to find that out, that I didn't know what I was doing.
You were just bluffing your way out.
But I was doing okay. Fortunately, I think because the music was so good, I got to slip in under the radar.
So then the question from one of the people that sent us questions, what is the piece best of equipment to use? They say on vocals, but I'm just going to bring it to overall to the studio. So check out the answers. Is it the microphone? Is it the artist? Is it the room? Is it you? Is it the engineer? I mean, because like everybody knows in here, it's not about how much the actual piece of equipment or what it has. Gold connections everywhere, all made in Russia and Germany. That's going to be the best. What is for you the best piece of
Definitely me, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, there you go. Case closed.
Definitely. I'll tell you this, Bruce Swedien always told me, and he gave me a lot of good lessons, and then I still use them to this. He said, boy, nobody ever leaves the studio dancing to the gear. And he was right about that. But I'd like to mention, I couldn't get a drum sound when I was starting out. I couldn't get a drum sound to save my life. And I knew what great records sounded like because I sat behind Swedien, and I sat behind records, Michael Jackson records, Quincy records, I mean, great artists, George Duke records where the drums just blew you away. They were so great. And I stayed up at night and I would plan and scheme because I had a gig the next day. I'm gonna use an RE20, I'm gonna, and make big plans on what the drums were gonna sound like, and I could not get a drum sound to save my fucking life. You know, anything that, it was serviceable, but it was nothing that was gonna blow you away. And then one day, it was on a Bonnie Raitt record, and Jeff Porcaro comes in. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to know Jeff or work with Jeff, but probably one of the greatest drummers of his day, still to this day. And he came in and sat down. I think it started out, I think I had a 57 as a talkback in the room before I brought any of the drum mics on. And he started to play, and just what was coming through that 57 was the greatest drum sound I ever got in my life. So, you know, that kind of informed me that
Was it the drummer?
It was his touch, the way he tuned the drums, his balance, the way and he made the harmonics work, and it was all him. And if I was smart enough to get the fuck out of the way and just capture what he was doing, it was going to be great.
So maybe that's our best tool, just learning how to get away.
Every time.
Perfect.
Every time.
Maybe we just overdo it sometimes.
Well, you can
with all the patching
enhance
and
it. You can make it better, certainly. but I think it originates, and any of you know that have worked, you know, with bands and musicians, and before you get really successful, I mean, the paradox is the more successful you get to work with better guys, and when you're starting out, really trying to make a name for yourself, and the only way to do it is do something that sounds and feels great, is you're not working with the best guys, you know, you're working with, you know, the cymbal man, you know, fucking cymbal man.
Or hi-hat man.
Yeah. If you see that guy, kick his ass and beat him over the head with a cymbal. I had a lot of cymbal men when I was starting out, you know. But, you know, but as you get better and you get more successful, you get to work with musicians that are better, and most of the time, they supply you with everything that you need to be a great engineer.
Are you one of those engineers that sort of like, how do you say, like you say the opposite thing to the musician, so you get the opposite the opposite reaction? Or do you talk a lot to the musicians, or do you just let them be? Do you guide them, or you just like stand back?
It depends. You have to know, you know, when to help somebody. But, you know, when they come into my studio, if I'm recording, certainly, I want to set it up, and Tom Lordialgi did it today, you know, when coming to make them breakfast, a cup of coffee, let's go for a boat ride. You know, by the time we're recording, they've already had a really good day. And, you know, that's about, you know, 75% of the battle is making people feel comfortable and knowing that I'm there for them. It's not about me, it's about them, about serving the music. And I'm going to do everything I can to make it the best day that they've ever had playing music in a studio. Mm-hmm. If I do that, man, it's, you know, it's a great day. We have.
Would you say that you learned a little bit about doing that from your wife, Rose?
No, she's so nasty, man. That's not true. I mean, Rose, if you ever worked at the record plant when she worked there, she made you feel like you were an honored guest and you were in her house, and
she was
she'd make sure you were comfortable, and she would do anything, 40 something. But she would make, you know, I got some of that from her. But some of that you're just born with, you know. I mean, when you do this, you know, I'm a pleaser. I like making people happy. It makes me feel better. I like, you know, maybe it's selfish in a way.
Right,
But I like it. I like being in there, and everybody, you know, I mean, it's the best when and everyone's working on the same thing, and you don't get to do it that often, but tracking dates, when you'd have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 people in a room playing together, and you got the headphone balanced right, you know, maybe you had 2 mono headphone sends, and, you know, and you got it going, and everybody's making the best music and playing the best they ever did in their whole life, and part of it was that you made it so effortless and so comfortable, you know, for everyone, and that's... It should be that, and whatever that takes,
right.
Whatever that. Now, as a producer, you know, George, you probably know, depending on an artist, you're trying to get a vocal performance out of somebody, or, you know, getting a guitar part right, or getting the arrangement right. Sometimes, you know, you got to put the hammer down on somebody too. But that's what makes you great. You know what it takes, but ultimately you're there. And it's not about you, but ultimately you're there to help them, help their career, to serve the music, to serve the musician, serve the artist. That's what you do. So whatever that takes.
Sometimes I say, as audio engineers, we're just the bridge between artists and technology. We have to just dial in.
How do you get your husband to perform right when you're producing him?
That's between me and him.
Do you make everybody leave the room?
No, he has to make better breakfast the next morning if he doesn't nail it. Yeah. It's just manipulation.
Yeah, but you do. You twist it around, you do it, you know, and it's for his own good, right?
Absolutely. But, so I was going to say, so Eric Clapton, Sting, I mean, all these amazing people that you have worked with. So tell us one super bad story, like something that was just like, what the hell happened here? And then tell us a super amazing story so we get both sides of the coin from either of these people. We're not going to tell anybody. You can embarrass them. Or you can just randomly pick somebody from the room and just embarrass them.
My experiences have been positive and have been great. You know, I've never been fired, never been corrected, never had anyone ask me to solo the kick drum. Do that, we're out of that room. Oh, there's the button for the solo on the kick drum right there. I'll be gone. Get your shit out of here and go. I'm not soloing the damn kick drum for you. I don't, it's, you know what, all my experiences for the most part have been really positive with artists. You know, I fall in love with the people I work with. I gotta say for the most part, at least as far as I can remember, I've been treated really well. Never been stiffed. Maybe once or
I
twice.
think you've been really, really lucky.
Maybe I've been lucky, I don't know. But that has to do with having your business. No, I don't always have, you know, making records now, you know you don't have your deal done. You go start the record without your deal done, and a lot of times, you know how that turns out. As soon as you're done, they forgot what, you know, what you did or what you talked about, and you probably weren't even there. So, piece of advice is have your business shit together.
Yeah,
that was Swedine
absolutely.
before you walk in the room, but that's impossible. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And especially now when you have collaborating and, you know, the skills you need is more than just being an engineer. Guys like me, I think, are a dying breed because the skills that you guys need now is, you know, compositional, arrangers, business people, IT expert, engineer, producer, musician, writer.
I think the role of engineers is like as we are trying to define it, it's ever changing all the time.
Yeah, everybody has their own studio. Every musician. Lee's a great drummer. Lee's also a great engineer. You know, he gets called, they send him files, he engineers himself, records himself. Dan does the same thing. Everybody does that now. So, you know, a lot of times you don't need an engineer. I mean, that's part of your skill set is being a successful musician and creator, whatever you do, you need those skills. And, you know, that's just how it is. And the way it works now, you don't have to sit behind a big, you know, complicated console. You sit in front of your laptop or, you know, whatever the tools you have, you know, you turn on a YouTube video and you can learn how to, you know.
But maybe that's also genre related, right?
Yeah, well, that could be.
That could be it. So maybe it's just about, depending on your skills, you just got to find your niche.
Yeah, but for recording, but I think for mixing, I think there's always going to be people that really excel at that. No matter what the technology or what it is, there are some people that have the experience and have the ability to take a song and wade through all the bullshit you put on there and find, get to the heart of the matter and make it so, turn that cold hard technology into emotion, make people feel something, you know, whether it's be shaking their ass or crying or partying or whatever it is. There's always going to be a handful of people that really excel at that. There's always going to be a lot of people that want to do it, but I think there's only going to be not many that really have a feel for it and know how to do it.
Absolutely. And then talking about mixing, there's another question that we got. What are some of your pet peeves when it comes to recording a session or mixing a session? Like that little thing, you know, we've all heard Bruce Swedine's stories. Tell us your stories, pet peeves, things that it's like, no, this fader needs to go here, or like this has to be green.
Well, in my mix room, it's hard to go to work if there's some dust over there on the desk, you know? I gotta clean stuff up before I can work. Oh, you know, that. You know, I don't have a lot. You know, people that wear too much cologne, certainly sometimes in the control room is bad. or none at all. I think none at all is better than too much. There's that. I don't know. You know what?
When you're sharing a room, do you let everybody drink, smoke, eat?
I don't like people eating in my control room.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I don't even eat in there. You know, and my wife has some stuff, you know, these spacer things that smell really good, so it all smells fresh. And especially when people walk in the room, especially female artists, because we're kind of pigs, and you know. But when a woman walks in and goes, "Oh, it smells nice in here," I love, you know, that I call up my wife and say thank you. You know that it should be fresh. So I don't like the smell of onions in my studio. I can't, you know. So I don't do that. Listen, studio etiquette is really important. It's important to know as an engineer, as a producer, certainly. But musicians coming in, you know, some have to be educated. Mostly the people starting out that don't know because they don't learn those things. But listen, you have to certainly, you know, kindness and empathy is the same kind of thing. And simple fucking courtesy. You know, I was talking to Tom, we were at his studio, they're talking about, you know, the P&E wing came up with standards for delivery standards, because we get these Pro Tools files with 100 files of audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, you know, I mean, just fucking messes. And, you know, we're talking about creating a paper like, well, delivery standards, we did that. But what it really is just a little fucking courtesy. You know what I mean? Write down what the track, what's on the track. What's the big deal in the comments section, you know? So know that we all live in a thing that this is going to be handed off to somebody. You know, a little fucking courtesy goes a long way. That's what pisses me off. The people that aren't courteous. And that solves a lot of problems with standards. You all know what to do, but just out of sheer laziness, give me a fucking break. You know, someone, cut somebody down the line a break. In the same way, you're going to get cut a break the same way, you know? Let me work on the song and not unravel what you've done because you're too lazy or, or too stupid or too uncaring, to not do it.
The producers and engineering has done a great job compiling all of those specifications.
By the way, I don't know if any of you've seen the paper. It's available. Where is it available? www.pnewing.com / Maureen Droney. Anyway, it's a great piece. It's a great piece of paper, especially if you had assistants and people doing that stuff for you.
Pass it out.
Because I look around this room, I see everybody's kind of a seasoned pro. It's been around and you know how to do those things, but it's just the fucking kids that don't.
Or for teaching, just slip it in their package, in their graduation package.
But it's a great paper. The delivery standards and best practices. It's really a great document, and a lot of our peers in the P&E wing worked really hard, and asking nothing in return other than to share, their own hard-earned knowledge, right? Maureen says, yeah.
So talking about one more thing, a little change in your career. Then you also have worked doing music for films. So I just finished mixing for a film for Columbia, and it was way different the way you approach it. So tell us about your story. You worked for Bessie, right? It won an Emmy
with
for
Queen
that.
Yeah.
With Queen Latifah. So tell us about how was that experience as opposed to you don't have the pressure of a label. You don't have the. But technical wise, how do you approach it?
Well, that was easy. She's very strong-willed, but I'm very good with strong-willed women. I've been surrounded. I'm married to one. All my best women friends are very strong-willed. And they. So it wasn't a problem communicating with her and just getting your own ego out of the way. That was you serve the director, you see what you have to do. But the first one real film score I got to work on was Coming to America, going back. And that's one of those things like, yeah, anybody asks you if you know how to do something, say yeah, whether you know how to do it or not. I got a call, somewhere Nile Rodgers got hired to do the score for Coming to America, going back, and he needed someone that, he could relate to and that, knew how to do film scores. Hey, Ed, yeah, I know how to do that. I didn't know the fucking first thing about it. It worked out. I had been around, I'd recorded some orchestras, but not, 100-piece orchestras and on a big soundstage with the director and the producers and everyone there. And, it's a whole set of different thing about how you act and what your responsibility is and how to do it. I was able to pull it off, but it was scary. But it turned out okay. But, that's just saying yes and you figure it out. I'll say, just say yes to everything if you're starting out. Yeah, I can do that. YouTube wasn't around then just to show me how to do it. But it worked out. But it's the same thing. It's music. You're dealing with music. You're dealing with people. You serve the song. You open up your heart. Your perception is, what is this supposed to be? And like an artist, there's no guarantee that you're going to be, you want to be an artist, there's no guarantee you're going to be an artist. I want to be Da Vinci. Well, Da Vinci was Da Vinci. And how many millions of wannabes, you got it or you don't. As a musician, I'm one of those guys that could practice 12 hours a day and not get any better. And there's people sitting here that could, pick up an instrument and blow anything on any instrument and figure it out in minutes and make it sound and feel like something. So, as an artist, you're good at it, you develop skills at it, you open up your heart, you open up your perception, you do the best you can, and hopefully you get over.
Hopefully, yeah. So tell us about what you're doing now. The Willie Nelson album just came out.
Yeah, fortunately the phone still rings. It's harder. It's difficult now doing what we do. We've all suffered. There's certainly no more royalties. Used to, as a top mixer, certainly even as an engineer, you have a relationship with the artist, and you get a point, or and you could do really well. Now you know, you can charge less now than you could 20 years ago or 25 years ago because the sales of the music you work on don't, you know, it just doesn't compute to, you know, big paydays. You know, I kind of approach it like it's a hobby. So I don't stress about it, and I'm, you know, coming here, I actually got a call from Robbie Robertson, and he's got a studio there. He's working on a movie with Martin Scorsese, and I've been friendly with him, but he's never hired me to do anything. I think I mixed a song for him years ago, but before coming here, I've been putting it off. You know, I think we've been trying to come here for a year or something like that. And finally, I said yes, and Robbie goes, yeah, what are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing for the next week? I'm working on this movie. You want to track it with me? And I got to say, no, I can't. I'm going to Miami to talk to these fucking jaguars.
We thank you for that. We're sorry. But we thank you for being here.
But you know what? I look at, but I'm more relaxed about it. And but you know what? If you do it, I follow Bruce Wadine's advice. And when I was making money, I saved it, and I never lived beyond my means. Well, I bought a boat once, and I'm still hearing about that from my wife. But it was a really great experience, and I really enjoyed it. So it was worth it. It was worth it. But so I can, you know, I can do what I want. And fortunately, the phone still rings. I just got to do. I've done 2 records for Willie, and I got to record them and mix them, which was, you know, you don't get doing what we do. As an engineer, you don't get that call. A lot of times you record it, you track it, and it goes somewhere else, and somebody else mix it. Or as a mixer, you get handed all this stuff that, you know, and you just mix it. So I got to record and mix 2 Willie Nelsons. We did a Gershwin record 2 years ago. They won a Grammy.
We won a Grammy for that.
You know, it was great, and it's a great band and a great room. Studio 2 at East West in Los Angeles is probably one of the greatest rooms ever. As I'm getting older, I realize now how great that room sounds and how hard you don't have to work to get it sounding good in there. You know, crack the fader and it's music. And I just did a Willie Nelson singing Sinatra record, which just came out. I think it just came out today or yesterday.
Last night, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, boy, it's, you know, total thrill. And, you know, strings and horns and legit, and getting to do records like that is really fun. For me, it's a lot more fun than a fucking 808 all day. But, you know, I'm lucky enough to be recording real musicians playing, I don't want to call it real music, but traditional music with melody and performances and, you know, and things like that, and great musicianship, and I just love that. I just finished mixing a record that Tom started, but he kind of bailed on it, but it's this German kid, but it was produced by Mark Hudson, who was the Hudson Brothers, and if you've ever seen him, he's got a rainbow beard, but he produced Ringo records and Aerosmith, and Tom's I think mixed all his work for him, and he's really good, and these elaborate, very elaborate productions, you know, 150 tracks, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. Tom wasn't up for it. Could have been, but you know, but I enjoyed it, and it was an okay payday, and you know. I didn't mind it. It was fun, and I liked Mark's company. He was funny and cracked me up. But you know, the phone rings. I'm going back mixing some guy, but I'm not, you know, I'm not making hit records. You know, I mean, I had the experience of what it's like being on the A-team. You know, when you're booked a year in advance, and you know, you get points, and everybody loves you, and experience that. But that's the arc of our career, and that's why you need good mental health too, because you know, this shit happens. You don't get to stay at the top. But when the window's open for you, man, save your money and really enjoy it and really savor it. Pay attention that it's going on. And if I have any regrets, it's that I didn't, you know, pay close enough attention and realize how special the times were that, you know, that I was living. And you end up taking it for granted, and and looking back, boy, I wish I would have savored it more, because it goes by. But the beauty is in what we do. The music still exists, and you can go back and listen to it and go, oh, boy, that was pretty fucking good. And listening to it now, it still moves me. No, listen to Willie's record. You know, I mean, you do this. I don't know how many of you feel like you failed at the end of a project. Typically, I do, because, well, you've listened to the song so many times, so there's no more surprises for you. There's no more what Ry Cooder calls goddamn joy. You know every part, that, you know, guitar part that delighted you, and the way that it turned into the bridge that was so cool. And, you know, I've heard it 100 times, and oh, it's not so cool. You know, so I feel like, you know, this record, by the time I'm done, it's not moving me like it did when we started. So I feel like, oh, you know, maybe I didn't do so good. But I mean, I just got a copy of a CD of Willie's record and listened in the car, and I was like, wow, who did that? It was like the shape of it, the whole thing was like perfect, you know, where his vocal was sitting, the way the strings swelled, the dynamics of the thing, the shape of it was just perfect. Unfortunately, you know, 20 people are going to hear it.
You mixed it?
Yeah, I recorded it and mixed it.
And tell us a little bit about how do you approach, after you've been so involved in these kind of projects, how do you approach the next guy mastering?
I let him do what he wants. By that time, I'm done. We just said, I just went to Bernie Grundman to master something. I mean, if you've ever mastered with Bernie Grundman, you know, he's the greatest of the great. Him and Ludwig and Doug Sachs, who was one of my best friends, who did most of my records for 40 years, 35 years or 40 years. You know, I just let them do what they want. They've got experience. They work on everything every day. And by the time I bring it, I've done everything I possibly can. At that point, man, I need some help, you know. And that's, you know, that's what I look at. What's the responsibility of a mastering engineer for me? Save Eddie's ass. You know, that's...
So how about,
I don't have much to say.
All of this artificial intelligence services like Landler and all of that? How do you feel about that? Because there are some people that believe my mix is just the end of this project. I'm done.
Are they going to have automated mixing at some point? I'll bet they do. You could probably put in the algorithm. The thing that cost the most and took the most time is the loudest. I don't know what to make of it. I think probably there's going to be a place for it, I'm afraid to say.
Because nowadays, I mean, everybody's just pushing in those limiters, hard limiting plugins, multi-bands, and it's just
but there's
become
only so far you
standard.
can go. If you're streaming on the internet, there's only so much level. If you give them more level than that, you know what it sounds like. You know, how many times have you done something and heard it stream and go, oh my goodness, this is broken. So, you know, those algorithms will probably, you know, do that for you. You know what? Everybody's making records. Everybody's got a laptop and GarageBand, you know, and has some bad idea about music. It can do it and put it out and post it. There's probably a place for automated mastering. It's not for me, but it's for somebody.
Right.
Because I need to go in and Bernie's, boy, he's got great coffee. They'll make you a great, you know, great
You're always in
cappuccino.
for the experience.
And the other part is with Doug. I really love Doug because I go in there and he'd tell me how great the mix was. You know, and I needed that at that point. Although there's been times Doug in particular said, you know, on this one, I think you better go back home and revisit this one. It's really not up to your high standards. And I didn't like hearing that, but, you know, I needed that. But you know what? And we all share this, no matter if we're selling one record or if we're the only one hearing it or the artist is, man, we all strive to do as good as we can. I've never known anyone that's going, well, that's good enough. No, I've never met anyone that does this for a living. A musician, a producer, an engineer, an arranger, anyone that's ever a mastering guy that's gone, well, that's good enough. Never. Everyone I know has always tried to go beyond what's humanly possible to make it as great as they could be. Whether there's $1,000 in it, $1 million in it, or nothing in it, you know, just for nothing, just out of sheer pride and out of sheer belligerence, you know, just trying to make everything as good as it can possibly be. And I've never met anyone that does it for a living that lasted, that ever did anything less than that.
Right. Disregarding the tools that you have as an engineer, disregarding everything, either a computer or a huge board, analog versus digital, all of that. It's about the heart. It's about persistence.
That's right. You know, I always say that, you know, about the gear. A guy like Al Schmidt could make a better record with a hammer and a 2x4 than some idiot that has every plug-in and everything possible. He'll, you know, Al Schmidt with a piece of wood and a hammer will make a better record than anybody with all the greatest gear in the world.
Right. That's absolutely true. Well, thank you very much. So we are open now to questions.
It went so fast.
It went so fast, right? So.
Anybody hungry? Is it true that the Recording Academy is taking everyone out to dinner tonight?
Yeah. Kenny, don't hide. Don't hide.
I think it is. Oh, and we're all going to get laid.
We got a mic right here.
Not in that
anybody
order.
help us, or you just pass it out? Yeah, Maureen,
Ed, thanks so much. It's entertaining as hell to listen to you. Bruce was here a couple weeks ago. As you know, you made the video for the Latin Academy. And
from the Serengeti, I got to make, that was the first. I got to make a video for Bruce from overlooking the Serengeti in Tanzania.
I got to ask him a question which kind of got obscured along the way, but I think you're even maybe a better person to ask.
By the way, I love Bruce Swedien so
No,
much.
he was great. It was a really wonderful event, and so many great tribute videos and everything. But regardless of style or genre, what would be, after 40 plus years of tracking, what would be your dream team rhythm section when you walk in? Guitar player, bass player, drummer, key piano player. No.
Well,
You can say Lee Levin.
No.
Definitely. All the people are in this room. And I include mixers, engineers, producers, label executives.
No, just like the guys that
It depends on the music. But, you know, I love recording Jim Keltner. I mean, he's a drummer. You hear 2 bars and you go, that's Jim Keltner. But he's not right for all the pieces of music. Jeff Porcaro, man. Anytime, any day.
That's only the drums.
The world misses
I need the rhythm section.
The world misses him. Oh, bass players. Well, Pino Palladino. I just got to record him on a record that I did with for a guy named Jose James. Pino Palladino is a bad motherfucker. Leland Sklar. Bob Glaub. I mean, those come from the singer-songwriter, the Jackson Browne days. But there's some modern guys. Paul Bushnell, who plays with Faith Hill and Tug McGraw's boy. Tim McGraw. Tug McGraw is a baseball player. And he kills it. And just different kind of things. And he can give you fuzz bass and all that stuff. So piano player, a guy named Randy Kerber. I just saw him. Randy Kerber can do anything. And he's just a wonderful piano player. He played the Liberace stuff. If you ever saw the Liberace thing on HBO, that was Randy Kerber playing all that stuff, you know, and teaching him how to match it up. Worked with him a bunch. Guitar. Steve Lukather. A guy named Mark Goldenberg, who lives in L.A. that I've known forever. Played with the Cretones, but I knew him when I was a kid.
That Jackson Browne, I'm Alive record that you did.
Yeah, Jackson Browne. I mean, he's all over that. Yeah. Val McCallum, who also plays with Jackson. Val is I'll go in a room with him any day. Greg Leese, if you're going to play lap steel, slide guitar, steel guitars, he's something else. But there's these Nashville guys. Vince Gill. Vince Gill plays his ass off, and he can sing on any rhythm section. But all these guys, there's so many. It just depends on the music. You know, I like to do I don't produce so much anymore, mostly because, boy, it's a bullshit job now. Unless you're writing the songs, unless you're the writer, then producing makes sense. But just as a pure producer, you know, you got to sign on for 2 or 3 months. There's not much of a budget. You're not going to be rewarded with any royalties at the end of the day, and somebody's going to be pissed at you, you know, no matter what. As a mixer, boy, I get to go in, you know, for 2 weeks, maybe 3 if there's lots of tracks. Everybody's happy at the end of the day, and they write you a check, and you know, you're in and out, and you know, and it's a big love fest. So producing is tough, but when I produced a lot, I love casting musicians to do a record like you would a movie or a TV show. You know, find guys that had a certain heart and had a certain sensibility that the artist could bounce off of, and so you know, I like doing that. But
Anybody else?
But there's nothing better being in the studio with great musicians when everybody's working together and the music is happening. Man, it's the best. And I always get depressed when the tracking is done and everybody goes home because, you know, that feeling of, you know, of everybody in it together, you know, the whole is greater than the individual parts. It's just the best when everyone's together. That's why I got into it. Most of us probably did. That's the best time and we don't get to do that often with the cats in the studio. And, you know, I came up, it was every day we were doing that. All the cats were there and it was always, you know, the stories are always great. But the music was always great, and the experience of being together was always wonderful. And the way the music would fill the speaker, man, it's like, make me kvel. That's a Yiddish word, like, oh, you make your heart jump out of your chest with joy.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Ed. My name is Ivan Perone. I'm a music lawyer here in Miami, one of a very tiny list.
Sue everybody.
First of all, thank you so much for being down here, and I would invite you to a burger anytime. But this year marks 20 years that I have been a member here in the chapter of Florida. I'm a 2-term Grammy governor, and the question that I really have for you is, as Academy members, how can we get earlier access to the P&E Grammy party list
That's a very good question. I'm already getting calls already, like, what does it take? First of all, it's a shitty, oh, Tom, it's a shitty party, you don't want to go. A bunch of a-holes there. Hi, how are you? Oh, everybody's networking. Maureen, you're going to have to talk to Maureen about that. I mean, the problem we have is the venue, which is it's the Village, and it really is a great party. The problem is the fire marshal. They can only get so many people in there. I don't know what. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Yeah, you know what? They can find a bigger venue. It's not right, and it ends up being populated by people that do stuff for the P&E, for the Academy and other people, not just people that show up once a year that want to go to a party. And that means showing up to working on the papers, working out and doing mentoring and showing up with all the programs that the P&E wing does. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of opportunities for you to do that in this chapter, for you to mentor, and that would, you know, that's a ticket in all the time by doing that instead of just showing up when there's a Grammy party. And I mean that in the nicest of ways. But there's just not room to get everybody in. And I'm happy, you know what, I'm not going to go this year, and I'm going to give the 2 tickets I would get to some lucky couple. And it could be you. What are you going to wear?
Thank you very much. Do we have another question? Thank you.
It's messed up. We should have a bigger venue, but a bigger venue would take away some of the intimacy of it. I don't know what the answer is. And fortunately, I'm not the co-chair of the P&E wing anymore. I'm not on the advisory council. I'm not any part of it except an emeritus guy, and that's Maureen's problem now. And I don't have to. Or call Jeff Greenberg, who owns the Village, and he's hey, Jeff. Yeah, this is well, I'd like to maybe book a little time with him, and he'll get you in the party. There's book a session. Sorry, Maureen. No, I'm not. I'm off, Maureen. I'm out. I'm over.
Thank you very much. Do you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, I just watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High the other day. Where are you? Right in back here. And I'm curious about your experience on that. It's such a trip down memory lane, that movie. So
it was cool. It was real cool. You know, I was just starting out. I was at Westlake, and it just happened by accident. You know, you get a lot of young people like, well, how do you show up? I showed up. You know, it's just show up, and it started out. It's a good story. The woman who directed it, her name was Amy Heckerling, and she became a friend. She directed. Cameron Crowe wrote it, and I was an assistant, but I was. Oh, and I think I met. George is here, is a common friend of ours, a guy named David Resnick. He was in a band. It was called Reeves, Nevo, and the Cinch. And Reeves Nevo was a guy named David Brandt, and he was married to Amy Heckerling. And she had put, and because I had worked with David at night doing a demo for free, you know, between sessions, you know, start at 1 in the morning and staying up late. And so Amy had created, you know, in the prom scene, the band singing Life in the Fast Lane on stage. All right, so they needed a recording of that. And Reeves Nevo, Dave was friends with Reeves Nevo, David Brandt. Hey, you want to record us? We're going to do this thing. And an assistant worked for Irving Azoff, who was one of the producers of the film, a guy named Bob Destocki, who recently passed away, who became a good friend. He was there. So we were going to record these scenes for the film with Reeves Nevo in the prom, and there was actually like a half a dozen other places where they were, and she was starting to put him. It was going to be a single, and we ended up recording a bunch of stuff, spent a couple weeks, and so it was Life in the Fast Lane, some other songs. So I showed up, and we ended up doing that. But Reeves, here's a good one for you, for your mates. So so we record all this stuff, and it's in the movie, and he's got a single, and he's going to be featured in the film. But Amy was staying out late because she was editing the film. And he had some kind of breakdown and burst into the editing bay and started yelling at her, when is she fucking coming home? And anyway, she divorced him. And all of his scenes were cut out of the film. and he's living in Hoboken or someplace like that. But while that was going on, all of a sudden, all this other music started showing up, and they didn't know who to give it to. And because I was there, all of a sudden, I got to mix some stuff for Jackson Browne, and there was all that other music that's in there I got to work on, and a lot of it just needed to be transferred to MAG so they could do it. But I ended up like doing that and mixing the whole thing. And what's funny is that's how I met my wife. Because it was Union, and I was at Westlake, but because it was Union Record Plant, which was down the street, a couple blocks away, was a Union place. So I brought it over to Record Plant. They got me in the Union. I'm still in the Union to this day, although I rarely do Union gigs. And I did a lot of the work there on that. But I touched all the music, and I ended up mastering that record too. Myself, I didn't know how to master it. Say yes to everything. It was on vinyl. I didn't know how to do it, but I figured it out.
For the whole film?
Yeah.
All the songs?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And whatever credit, they couldn't give me the credit for some reason, so they gave me like post-production audio consultant or something like that. But anyway, it was great, and I really enjoyed it, and it turned out to be a really iconic movie, and it was really fun. And then guys like Sean Penn, Spicoli would show up and hang out, and I got to, it was really fun. Thank you, David Resnick, for meeting show up. Somebody I met that, I did a demo for that I met in a club that, brought it in the middle of the night. So, show up.
Cool, thank you. Anybody else?
All right. Oh, hi. I don't know how much of an answer you can give to this question.
What's your name?
My name is Philip.
What do you do?
I work with Shane Lamar Entertainment, just a small entertainment company. We produce local events. This is a bit more off to the side, though. So with one of the guys that I brought in for mixing, a friend of mine, basically, he's trained as a studio engineer. I'm working with him on a collaboration, and basically we've brought together like nine songs or so, and the good part is it's the best quality I've ever been recorded on. The bad part is I can't finish it with him. Like, he's Achilles.
Crazy? Is he crazy?
A little bit. No. It's just that, like, his Achilles heel is accessibility. I have a very hard time, like, getting him to reliably make time to meet up with me so we can finish our project, and it's not like, I don't feel like he means any disrespect or anything. We were in this together, working together, but it's like, we could have been done already. We could have had it registered, and it gets frustrating. I feel like sometimes I wonder if I should just move on, but I don't know. I feel like I'd be giving something up very important. I guess the question is, do you have any ideas, or can you relate in any way to where, like, what I can do to maybe motivate him to...
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Is he being paid, or are you guys being paid, or is he kind of working on the comm?
Yeah, we're both poor.
Okay, so does he have another gig that he's showing up to that he has to work and make money while he's neglecting you?
Sort of. He's driving Uber.
Well, but he obviously needs the bread, so
yeah.
He's not thinking ahead, and he's going for the immediate dollar. I think you probably got to move on. If he wanted to do it, he'd be doing it. But I get through the same thing. You know what? I mean, for guys like me, the best way to get a gig is to offer to do a favor for a friend for nothing. And all of a sudden you get a gig and you don't have time to do it, and then your friend gets mad at you because I took this project on. So that sounds a little like that. I know he's doing Uber. There's probably some really great people in this room that would love to take a look at it and collaborate with you.
Yeah, because then the next question is, like, what do I do with the material that I have? Like, at this point, it's kind of, like, linked with him. I do most of the compositions, but...
Where are the files?
Right now, they're either on my computer, I have them on my phone.
So you have everything?
Yes.
You have all the elements?
Oh, wait. No. He has the most updated Pro Tools sessions, but I have, like, all the MP3 files. Like, I have, like, earlier files.
But you can't finish with MP3 files. Who has the raw files?
He has
everything
he has the raw files.
Doesn't he want to? Doesn't he want to give them to you?
He could, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have.
Ask him for the stuff, or does he have the skill set that you need to finish?
Basically, all the tracks are finished. We just need to master them. Like they're all, you know,
so
they're
it's
all
mixed and done.
basically. Like ideally.
I know why he's not. I know why he's dodging you now.
Okay.
So I mean, it's hard to tell really where you are on the project. Maybe what you need is a lawyer.
There's a lawyer right there. Point the lawyer in the
This
room.
is networking at the best, isn't it?
Maybe I shouldn't ask the question. No.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. You know, I mean, that's you know, obviously he's more interested in making money than doing something on the come, so it's not important to him. So fuck him.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Guess I'll be getting those files.
Yeah. And if he sues you, after it's successful,
so be it.
Yeah. He doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was quite an. I mean, sometimes you do really need a voice of experience when you're going through those stages, especially when you're starting out. So thank you, Ed, for saying that. I mean, sometimes people like up in the industry sometimes need to say, you just got to move on, right? I mean, at all stages, that is valid. Anybody else has another question? Most likely, Carlos Bedoya has a question. Yeah, he always does. He always does, and they're very uncomfortable. So I would like to put you on.
Carlos every
Yes.
time.
Carlos, by the way, you're sitting right next to my mom.
Really?
Oh.
I'm sorry
she's
I
been
said
watching
that
what
bad
I've been
word.
watching.
Sorry, what's your mom's name? What's your mom's name?
Clara.
What is it?
Clara.
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 Clara. Hi, nice to meet you. You must be very proud. Good.
Okay, Carlos, go ahead and embarrass somebody. I know you were, for the past 3 Grammy events, you've been dying to ask questions, but you always hold back.
They always hold me back.
No, I'm giving you stage, man.
No, I was wondering,
Loco.
what milestones have been changing your sound through the years? I mean, you get to a sound to a point and then it changes and then change it. What are the biggest milestones that have been changing your sound lately?
My perception, more than anything else. The experience that I've gotten. You know, Swadine always gave me, he said, the biggest idea, the biggest thing you want to achieve is being a recording engineer. And as a producer and mixer is clarity. It should be clear. And maybe at the time that was valid, but that's not true anymore. Whatever it takes to make the music work, to get the emotion across. So, whatever it takes, now that I'm experienced enough to not be afraid of stuff being fuzzy or, whatever it's supposed to be. That's the milestone, is growing up and getting experience and not being afraid of opening my heart to do whatever it takes and not be afraid to do something different or do something radical or just, to do whatever it takes. I didn't always have the courage to do it. So the milestone is probably, growing up and growing some cojones. Some fucking cojones,
I love how Americans just adopt beautiful Spanish words like that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carlos. See, it wasn't so bad. You shouldn't be held back.
Oh, that was a pretty good question. Not sure about the answer, but it was a good question.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I guess it's kind of a question. That's true. It's kind of both. My name's Gary, by the way. Chicago, Loyola grad.
No way.
Yep, absolutely.
You went to college there?
Yeah, went to college there. I grew up there my whole life.
What was your address?
What was my address? Rogers Park. I can tell you that for sure.
I lived on Rogers Park.
See?
Yeah.
We'll have that conversation.
Sheridan Road and...
Yeah. It's where it was. Changed a little bit up there.
Yeah.
I come from the artist management side for many years, and I was very fortunate that I've never been a creator, never been a writer or a producer, but I've been in, countless recording sessions over 25 years. And it just so happened earlier today I stopped by a session, they were doing vocals. I'm sure they were probably using Pro Tools and they were just cutting and pasting, and it made me think back to the 2-inch days. And I'm thinking the young generation generally has no idea what that was like. Are there things about that era that you miss versus some of the things? I understand some of the conveniences that come with technology, but when you think back to those days, things like 2-inch machines.
Well, you had to commit.
Right.
You had to fucking commit. And now, people can put it off. You know, it's, yeah, you had, I mean, you had to commit. You knew you had it or you didn't. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, 100%. I think the other observation, and I shared this with the guy earlier today, is that when the technology era came around, so much was being done at home, in a bedroom, or wherever it may be, because the cost came down, and listen, we all understand that. But there was a camaraderie of being in a studio environment that was missed for many years. I see it coming back, and everyone in this room probably can vouch for that one way or the other than I can. But I was trying to explain today the magic that happens, and whatever it is that drew the magic, whether it was drugs and alcohol, or it was just friends and between the engineer and the musicians or whoever it was, but there was a creativity that came from that I don't know, was unmatched. And maybe I'm biased because I'm from that era, but and obviously for you, that's what it was all about.
Yeah, but you don't want to be, yeah, you know, I get that, but I don't want to be that guy that's talking about the good old fucking days, you know?
I get it.
You know, you don't want to be that guy, you know? Let's, you know, what's happening now is pretty cool, and let's look forward and, you know, what's coming next. I know some guys are going to use a laptop and do something in their garage that's going to out-Beatle the Beatles, that are going to, you know, just change the history of music, and we're just waiting for that, and I know it's going to happen, and they're going to do it in a way and use some tools that guys like us couldn't even imagine. You know, I'm really, really expecting that, and I'm kind of looking forward to it in a way. But I want to, let's, you know, look forward to what we have and enjoy the time we have and what we have, and, you know, and do that instead of the good old days, because they're not coming back. You know, analog, digital, you know, digital one. There's no, that's all over, and it's kind of nice, the democratization of the equipment, that anyone could do it.
Agreed.
Listen, you got to wade through a lot of crap, you know, to find something good. Maybe more now than ever. But still, people are doing really incredible things, programming things. I listen to stuff that I don't have the ability or the imagination to do, when I'm hearing kids that are doing stuff that is so fucking cool, you know, with music right now. So in a lot of ways, it's a golden age. But you have to go find it. There's not the 2 radio stations in your city that are playing all the hits. So there's a lot of other, you know, it comes down a lot of avenues, and you have to find it. But you know, kind of the balkanization of it. But boy, I think there's some people doing some really, really brilliant, cool music.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, the tools for sure have discovered people in nooks and crannies of this world that wouldn't have that opportunity otherwise. So I agree. But there's always a part of us that missed.
Yeah, but I wish everyone would have the opportunity to go over to Tom Lordielli's studio and have him put up a mix and listen to something that he's done. You go, boy, what the fuck? That's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Oh, we got to get him.
Oh, this is very important.
Just wait for the mic. Just wait for the mic.
You're Eddie and you're nice and everything is calm and life is good. But certainly there must be like one session in your life that you just couldn't take it and you just said, I'm not doing this anymore. Is there one, Eddie?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you. Can I tell you one?
I'd love to hear one.
Right. And this sticks with me 35 fucking years later. There's these guys, it was going to be my big chance, and they built a studio down in Orange County, California. I didn't see the room, but they had a label and they had money, and I went down there and we're going to do a session, and you know, some band that they hired, and it was a little room. I think the recording room was about the size of this stage. And I get down there, and I got all my microphones, I'm bringing speakers and all my gear, and I drive all the way down there, and this is going to be my big chance. And I get down there, and they had, you know, the 8108 console, beep, 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 beep. You know, it was really easy to fuck it up because there was no busing matrix. You know, you'd push a button, and it was all in early matrix, and it was kind of a pain in the ass, and you couldn't shift, you couldn't flop there's a lot of things you couldn't do. It was a badly designed console. It was a Neve, modern Neve, but it wasn't set up well. And so I get down there, and I'm setting up. I got the mics, and the drummer shows up, and bass player shows up, and the guitar player shows up, and the percussionist shows up, and the horn section shows up, and the background singers show up. And I think there was another guitar player. Oh, and a keyboard player shows up. And all of a sudden, there's 25 musicians down there, and there's no gobos, and I'm out of microphones and cables, but I'm game. I'm going to go get this. I'm going to make this work. And it just sucks. I can't get a sound. I mean, it's just cacophony. I can't get a sound, and I can feel the stink on me, you know, that the label guys and producers are looking at me like, this guy, he's ruining our record, and I can't get it happening. And then I get the tap on the shoulder like, hey, Ed, I want to talk to you a second out in the hall. Better bring your stuff. I got my stuff, and I remember the ride home. I lived in Santa Monica, California. It was about an hour-and-a-half ride, and that was the longest ride home I've ever had in my whole life. I mean, I was just heartbroken. I don't think I ever felt so low, you know, since my dog died as a kid. I mean, I was just destroyed, and it stayed with me to this very day, 35 years later, that I couldn't get it together. But it was one of those. I mean, I was asked to leave. I didn't quit, but other than that, no, you never quit, never give up, never fucking quit, never give up. Now, you may be home at night fretting, and I know you've gone through this. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to tell them, but I've never quit. I've never quit. Been fired, definitely been fired, but I've never quit.
Well, thank you very much. So,
how about you, Jimmy?
Oh.
I think we'd love to hear it. Just one, please. Do we got the time for that? We'd absolutely love to hear it.
So this was a brilliant moment in time. And so there's this band that I was like doing all that slave stuff, the funk stuff, and it was a band in Atlantic. I didn't like what they did. They weren't that dope. And I didn't like them, and they always wanted me to mix for them, and I was like, I don't want to do it. So finally the manager gets a hold of me. And you know, and Slave's really killing it. I'm killing it now. So like it's that moment. And he gets a hold of me and says, come on, man, you can just do this one record for us. I said, okay, but understand one thing. If I do this record for you, when they come in to mix it, tell them I'm going to do whatever I want to do to it. Like I'm going to change things. No problem, man. You do whatever you want to do. Okay, we're good. Of course, the session starts at 10 o'clock at night, so there's nobody in the office around. You know, Atlantic was still kind of attached to the studio. There's nobody around, so we're just there. Managers know where to be found. The band's there. They're not really feeling it because they were kind of forced into it, and I'm suddenly going, okay, this looks like this isn't cool. And Bill Dooley, do you remember Bill Dooley? Before he passed, he told me this great story about how I did. He says, and you had this attitude like there was all these people, and you just were like feeling like, I don't want to do this. And the guy comes in who was writing or something, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, wait a second, who are you? He goes, I wrote the song. I said, well, I'm mixing, get out. So that was how I was kind of doing the whole thing. And then these guys, they went out, and it was two brothers. They were brothers, and then the whole band. And they had like a little attitude that I was mixing the record, and the manager never told them anything. So as I'm mixing it, I'm taking horn. I don't like the horns. Horns are gone. Boom. Don't like the guitar part. Gone. And I'm just doing this, and they're watching me like rip their record apart. And he never told them anything. So they go into the studio. And meanwhile, I got this thing sounding great. I've used every patch chord I can find. I'm doing my best work. I'm like, you know, everything's moving. It's all great. And I heard them outside in the studio, and I put the mic on, and they were like sitting near the piano, they're going, who the fuck is Jimmy Douglas? Who the fuck does he think he is, man? He's fucking a music guy. And I'm going, oh boy. And so they came back around, and then they said something. They started getting like kind of almost violent. And I said, didn't you talk to the manager? And he didn't tell me nothing. And I was like, uh-oh. And I'm sitting in the chair, and they stood over me like they were about to beat my butt. So the thing was, the record was in such a state right now. I had gotten it to that place where, like, you know that place. When you know, you're like, oh, this is ready. So once they heard it ready, they were like, we don't need you. And I was like, yeah. So what I did, this was one of my finest hour, by the way. I ran on the whole console. First I went to the patch bay, and I went, took all the patch boys out, moved all the faders, turned all the knobs, and I went, good night, ladies and gentlemen. It's a terrible story, but it felt good.
There it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Backfired.
Anybody else? I think we could go around. I would spend the night just hearing all the nasty things that happened to you all.
Hey, Roberto, do you have a question?
Broadway have had to deal with it. But have you ever had to experience a time earlier in your career, I mean, you don't have to deal with it now, but where you've been treated as a purely technical person, that you're not a creative person? How did you deal with that? Like, how did you get around that?
You know, that's a really good question. And Neil Portnow said something like that to me, and I wanted to knock him out. You technicians. Now, as I thought about it later, I didn't, but it really stuck in my craw. But I'm hoping that he was just being sarcastic. I'm assuming he was being sarcastic, but I've gotten that. You technicians, and swallow it up. But Neil said something like that. But I'm thinking it was sarcastic. But I still think about it from time to time in the quiet hours when I'm laying in bed and my mind is racing. Yeah, I don't. That's just the perception. But did you hear your senators talking on the video?
Yep.
Huh? The people, you technicians out there that are going to get a piece of the action, call me anything you want. Give me a piece of the action while I'm a technician. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. All right. I would say we got to wrap it up. So thank you, everybody, for coming here.
Thanks for being so nice to me. It's nice to be here with you.
Thank you, Ed.
My brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Academy, thank you all for showing up, and thank you for inspiring us every day.
Thank you, Ed Cherney, Maria. Thank you, Maureen, for coming from the West Coast to get to know our friends. And when will we get you back to Miami to hang out with some guys and get on some sessions, man? Yeah.
Are there any studios down here?
All right. I'll send you off to the Wolves, and you get some sessions, and we'll talk. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone.